All right, we got a big crowd here this morning. Thanks, everybody. My name is Jay Byers, President and CEO of the Greater Des Moines Partnership, and I know many of you, but not all of you, but thanks everybody for making time for being here this morning. It's so great to see such a great crowd here in person, and a really exciting time here in DSM USA. As most of you know, or hopefully all of you know, the Greater Des Moines Partnership is the regional economic and community development organization serving central Iowa at Greater Des Moines, or as we like to say, DSM USA. We have 24 affiliate chambers of commerce and more than 6,500 regional business members and 365 plus investors. So thanks to all of you who are members and are with us this morning. Also want to specifically thank our distinguished guests that will be serving on our panel this morning. Senate President Pro Tem Brad Zaun, Senate Minority Leader Zach Wahls, House Assistant Majority Leader Brent Siegrist, and House Minority Leader Jennifer Konfrst. So let's give them a big round of applause for being here this morning. I'd also like to recognize the other legislators that are here. We have a number of regional legislators, senators, and House members. So if they could all stand up and we can recognize them as well. Claire. Welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning, and thank you for your service. We also have a number of local officials who are here today. So if you are a county supervisor, a mayor, a city council member, or a school board member, please stand up so we can recognize you as well. Also, I mentioned we have 24 affiliate chambers of commerce. So if you are on a board of any of our 24 affiliate chambers, would you please stand and be recognized as well? We also have a number of Greater Des Moines Partnership board members who are here. So if I could have them all stand up and we can recognize them too. And then finally, a big thank you to the Greater Des Moines Botanical Gardens for hosting us this morning. This is a fantastic facility, great views of downtown, and again, just a really great place for our entire region. So let's give them a big round of applause as well too. Thank you again. It's now my honor to introduce to you the Greater Des Moines Partnership's 2021 Board Chair, Fred Bowie. So Fred, you want to come forward?
Thanks, Jay. It has really been my pleasure to serve as the chair of the Des Moines Partnership this year. This is a great organization and does a lot of good work, and it has a tremendous staff. And one of the things that makes the task of chairing this board so easy is the staff, and I want to thank the staff for all the work that they do. And I'd like them to know that I really appreciate the effort that they give to this cause. Over the last 18 months, we've experienced significant challenges as a region and a state, but we continue to be resilient, and DSM is coming back strong. This year, we've been named top 10 cities to live in after the pandemic by the Today Show, one of 3 breakout cities on the forefront of America's economic recovery by the Wall Street Journal, the #1 best place to live in the Midwest for high salaries and low cost of living by the Ascent, and much, much more. But we still have a lot of work to accomplish. Our region benefits from great leadership and a willingness to work together with one voice. Our business and community leaders and elected officials collaborate and initiate game-changing projects. We have a history of finding common ground solutions, no matter what our party affiliation. We look forward to working with all of our state elected officials this year. Excuse me. As you will learn, Our featured priorities contain a number of topics that are critical to our region's continued growth, and they will require all of us to work together to move the needle. Thank you for everyone who has joined us today, and thank you for your continued commitment to DSM. I'd like now to ask Ryan Moon to the podium to give us a recap on our 2021 state legislative priorities. Normally, we would see Andrea Woodard, the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs and Public Policy, here this morning, but Andrea is enjoying some time away with the newest member of their family, and we wish them all the best. So at this time, Ryan.
Thank you, Fred. As Fred mentioned, I would like to provide a quick recap of last year's legislative session before we begin our panel discussion today. In 2021, our feature priorities were broadband, invest in Iowa, childcare, justice reform, and community placemaking. These were big goals, and I'm excited to say we saw a lot of success in those goals last year. Starting with broadband. This was a key issue and still is a key issue today for our members and investors. And this is happening before the pandemic, right? And we've just really noticed how big of an issue it is here in Iowa. But we were lucky to see House File 848 pass and be signed by the governor that expanded the Empower Rural Iowa funding grant by agreeing to $100 million a year. So we're looking forward to still working with the legislators and extending that as we continue to move forward. Also, there were a number of childcare proposals to come before the legislator last year, and a few were passed and signed by the governor. And one of those includes House File 302 that addressed the childcare cliff effect. This ensures families do not have to make the choice between a raise at work or losing their childcare assistance. We're also happy to see legislation that increased the income threshold from $45,000 to $95,000 net income for qualification of early childhood development tax credit. And legislation that permits a licensed childcare facility to be considered with determining eligibility for a project through the High Quality Jobs Program. While broadband and childcare were specific 2021 feature priorities, we did see a lot of other priorities pass last session, and we advocated on a number of bills that were signed into law, including tax changes, funding for housing programs, economic development incentives, and mental health funding. To tell you today about our 2022 feature priorities, I would like to invite Matt Ahman, Assistant Vice President of Government Relations for Principal Financial Group and the Partnership's 2021 Government Policy Council Chair. Matt.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to see people, right? Fantastic turnout this morning. Thank you, Ryan. And as you guys know, as a chair, that means you get to get up and take credit for the work that other people do. So I'll start by recognizing we've got 3 work groups. We've got 2 co-chairs of each. Those work groups, they meet, they pour over the information, they look at last year's material to come up with the priorities for 22. So I'd like to thank Billy Hunt and Annalie Kelly, who co-chaired economic development, Ruth Randleman and Stacy Williams, who co-chaired community development, and Sue Huppert and Greg Nichols, who co-chaired the talent work group. So that's the hard work that goes into coming up with those priorities. And all kidding aside, you might ask yourself, why go to the trouble? Why take time out of everybody's day job and the things they've got going on? It's because of the obvious, and that's that state government, the legislature, the governor, play a crucial role in economic development, making Iowa a place that people want to move to, that they want to stay, that they want to grow in. And that's why we spend the time to drag you guys here to talk about our priorities. And we think these priorities, there's 7 of them, but they're all crucial in terms of moving the state forward. And we do this from a state and federal perspective. You won't be shocked to hear any of these. The first on the list is the Des Moines International Airport Terminal Project. The partnership supports state funding for the project. There's been tremendous growth at the airport, but as anybody on the inside knows, it's time for a modernization of that airport. For a lot of people, that's the front door. That's the first thing they see. And looks like Fleur Drive is in good shape or will be soon. So it's important that we get that airport up to snuff for the next century. The next priority is talent. If you talk to anybody, whether any trade meeting or any partnership meeting, you hear about workforce. The partnership supports strategies to address the existing talent shortages. And this is across industries, and it's urban and rural. So that means continued support for things like Future Ready Iowa, as well as finding opportunities for foreign-born individuals and people returning to Iowa that might have moved away after college. The third priority, we would call it pro-growth tax policies. The partnership supports a tax structure that encourages business growth and predictability and protection of existing tax exemptions and economic development tools, including potentially corporate tax reductions and passage of the transit hotel motel tax that will, among other things, as I understand it, fund DART, which is an important partner in our region. The next priority is community placemaking. The partnership supports the creation of a large-scale investment program designed to transform Iowa communities via development and investment, and that's things like Icon Water Trails, as well as a pro-Iowa soccer stadium and Global Plaza. The last three priorities are not going to be a surprise: childcare, housing, and broadband. That's not to say that tremendous work has not been done, but there's more to be done. On childcare, the partnership supports the recommendations of the Iowa Skills to Compete Coalition and the governor's childcare task force to create affordable access to quality childcare options. From a housing perspective, again, this is not limited to urban or rural. This is something we hear all across the state. The partnership supports increases in the workforce housing tax credit, the State Housing Trust Fund, and additional incentives for communities and employers to invest in new and existing housing. And the final one is broadband. I will say, and I won't name who it was, they said to me last year before session that it's time we started investing in broadband like it's infrastructure. And that means like highways, hundreds of millions of dollars, and the state's taken amazing steps to do that. And I think with the advent of remote work, the need, or arguably the need, to continue to attract folks to the state, having that technological capability is very important. So at this point, we're going to call the legislative folks up to the dais to tell us whether we're going to get everything off our Christmas list or not. So if the legislators would make their way up and to keep it snappy, I will go ahead and, not that they're going to take a lot of time. I'm sure they're going to be very brief with their comments.
Was this snappy enough?
My parents are teachers, so you just don't take the wiring out when you leave home. All right, says Senate President Pro Tem Brad Zaun was elected to the Iowa Senate in 2004, representing Senate District 20, which includes Ermidale, Johnston, Grimes, and Jefferson Township. Prior to being elected state senator, he served on Ermidale City Council and as mayor. Senate Minority Leader Zach Wahls. Nice of you to join us.
Happy to do it.
Oh, boy.
Was elected to his first term in the Iowa Senate in 2018. He represents Senate District 37, which includes Coralville, Western Iowa City, and Solon and Johnson County, all of Cedar County, and the city of Wilton, Muscatine County. He was elected Iowa Senate Democratic Leader in November 2020. House Assistant Majority Leader Brent Siegrist. He's been around a little bit longer than some of us. That's a compliment. That's a compliment, I swear. He was elected to his first term in the Iowa House in 1984, where he served until 2001, until he ran and was elected again in 2020. Welcome back. He represents House District 16, which includes Council Bluffs. And finally, my House member, House Minority Leader Jennifer Konfrst, was elected to her first term in the Iowa House in 2018. She represents House District 43, which includes Windsor Heights, Clive, and West Des Moines. Again, all kidding aside and ribbing aside, thank you very much for spending the time with us this morning. All right, so this is where you guys decide if you want to derail the conversation or not. So before we get to the prepared questions, and there's no surprises, we want to give each of you guys an opportunity to tell us, a couple things. Could be something real or made up about yourself, or that could be if you were going to highlight one potential priority for your caucus for the coming session. I'll start at the far end of the table.
Oh, seriously? I was just trying to think of something real or made up about myself.
And I think everybody gets one pass, but there's no whammies.
Okay, pass. No. Hi, I'm Jennifer Konfrst. Thrilled to be here. Our caucus continues to be focused on many of the priorities we saw up there regarding workforce. We see workforce as an expansive issue and a short and long-term challenge. And so we see a lot of different solutions to it. And we'll be talking about those today, including the importance of childcare and other things. Our caucus is ready to go to make sure that all Iowans get the opportunity to achieve the dream that we've all achieved. And we're working hard to make sure that happens. Also, I was a supermodel in Paris. That's my 2 truths and a lie. I don't know.
I don't think we can figure out which is which.
Yeah, well, my truth would be I grew this beard because with this body, I'm going to address the Santa Claus work shortage. So,
You had time for that.
yeah, well, no.
And model, and model.
Exactly. So, listen, it's good to be here. I have been away for a while, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Representing any caucus is difficult. I'm not the leader. I'm not the speaker, the majority leader. And so you hesitate sometimes on how much you can say because you don't really have that authority to do that. But I can say with certainty that the House Republican caucus does care about the priorities that you have up there, including the taxation issues. And I think our philosophy is if we're going to look at tax reductions, and we are, that we need to make sure that we also maintain our other priorities. And so there is a way to do this, that you reduce taxes and perhaps in a pretty significant way, but at the same time, you have to be able to fund your other priorities and make sure you move together. So it's a balancing act, and that will be the challenge of this session, to do all the things we want to do and make sure that we have a sustainable budget 5 years into the future.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, all good. Well, good morning, everybody. State Senator Zach Wahls over in Eastern Iowa. I have the honor of representing Johnson, Cedar, and Muscatine counties in the Iowa Senate and leading the Senate Democratic Caucus. In terms of what we're going to be focused on this session, I know that talking about the workforce crisis is on our list for this morning, but that is going to be our #1 priority, something that we're going to be really focused on. Talking about things like career technical education, apprenticeships, investing in our community colleges, our Board of Regents schools, and making sure that our private colleges and universities have support as well. So excited for the conversation today. I'm not going to try and tell you something that's not true about myself, but I'm really looking forward to watching the Hawkeyes in the Citrus Bowl to make up for that very embarrassing performance in the championship.
Yeah, as a Cyclone fan, I agree. That was very embarrassing.
It's what it is.
I've now alienated half the crowd. You're welcome.
What was the expectations of the Iowa State team this year?
I'm just glad he's not leaving.
Hey, I am too. They got a great program up there. My name is Brad Zaun. I want to tell you, thank you for having me. It's so great to see so many familiar faces. I would not be where I'm at today if it wasn't for my Chamber of Commerce. It has really helped me out professionally, and from a networking perspective, it's an incredible group of people. So I'm very proud to be here. I would just tell you, I think the cat got out of the bag a couple of days ago. The priority of the Senate Republicans was to eliminate income tax in the state of Iowa. I do believe that that would probably be one of the biggest tools to attract people to Iowa if we could get that done. That is not going to happen overnight. I know that right now we're having conversations that our chair of Ways and Means mentioned in regards to tax credits. I think we need to look at all the tax credits that we have in the state of Iowa. I think it's appropriate to do that at this time to see how effective they are. Like I said, it can't be done overnight, but I think it would be a huge step for the state of Iowa if you do not have to pay income tax in the state of Iowa. So that'll be our priority. I would echo what Brent said in regards to we need to make sure that we're taking care of the other priorities. I wouldn't tell you the list that you just released seems very reasonable. And I think we all, as business people in this room, know the workforce shortage in childcare is a huge deal. But I would add one thing, and that's mental health. We do have our coffers full right now. We've got $1 billion in our taxpayer relief fund. We got $1 billion in surplus from this last session and $1 billion in our emergency and our reserves. So we need to take advantage of that, and we need to make sure we've taken some steps forward on mental health, but that to me would be a priority. Other than that, I'm not interested in growing the size of the government.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move to the prepared questions. Representative Siegrist, the partnership supports a decrease in the corporate tax rate. And thank you for your comments and Senator Zaun, your comments about the balance need there. We support funding of IWIL as well as the hotel motel tax to support funding for DART. Any additional comments with respect to what the House will do from a pro-growth or tax perspective in 22?
Sure. First off, it just strikes me as the fact that the people on the other side of the room can see Senator Wahls, but they certainly can't see me. He rises above the podium. I don't. So, listen, there's three things there, and Senator Zaun just mentioned the corporate tax structure. It is something that's going to get looked at this year. However, if you're paying attention to the news, you know that as was just stated, income taxes and the tax rates are probably a bigger priority. But as we move through this entire discussion, I think that the corporate tax rates will be looked at. The tax credits that are out there are pretty robust. So I recognize, and I think the House Republicans recognize that the corporate tax rates in Iowa are a little higher than they should be. However, you also have to take into effect, you have to compare apples to apples and look at those other tax credits that the state is offering for whatever it may be in terms of research and development tax credits and so on. So you can't just always look specifically at the tax rates, because there are other things that mitigate some of those higher rates by reducing your tax burden elsewhere. So long story short, because I don't want to take too much time, yeah, it will be part of the mix this year. I'm not exactly sure what will happen with that part of the mix, but clearly, as we look at all these tax issues, that will be something we'll be looking at. The one thing we have to be cautious of, though, is that, and Senator Zaun's right, we're at about $2.1 billion worth of surplus. Part of that is a still growing economy in the state of Iowa. Part of it, obviously, is the American Rescue funding that came into the individual citizens in the state, which has been spent and put into the economy. That's real growth. It's not the federal money that the state has been using. It's actual economic growth. So revenue indicators and the Revenue Estimating Conference will meet next week and give us our figure for the legislative session, continue to be pretty strong. And they will be almost certainly saying that we'll have over $9 billion worth of revenue coming into the state for the next year. So the thing to remember is that surplus is great, but it's one-time money. It's your savings account. And so whatever you do tax-wise, you have to make sure it's sustainable for 4 or 5 years down the road. So that's the challenge we have, and we will accept that, and corporate tax rates will be part of that. As to me personally, I think more money into our parks and recs and our water system and things of that nature is absolutely the right thing to do. I am not sure how much push that will get this year. It's an election year. It's a sales tax. I think there's a lot of support for it. I don't know if it'll be enough this year to get it done. That is nothing we have specifically talked about. 2 years ago, the governor pushed very hard for it. I don't know what she'll do this year, but clearly that is something that is on the radar screen. I'm just not sure what will happen this year, because I think all the caucuses are getting together in the next week to make plans, and so that we'll have some more information after that. Thirdly, the transit tax. I got accosted by the people from DART today. Not really. I was talking to them.
Is there law enforcement in the room? Do we need to file anything?
Actually, it was very helpful to me. I think it's something we'll look at. I didn't know. I guess Senator Dawson, who's my senator back home in Council Bluffs, Ways and Means Chair, is looking favorably upon it. So I think that it will also get a look this year. I'm not being very specific because we just can't be yet. But I'm from Council Bluffs, and we use the Omaha Rapid Transit System, and it is one way to look at reducing your property tax burden, apparently. And so I think it'll get a look at. One thing that might push against it is the fact that in the infrastructure bill Congress just passed, there's a tremendous amount of money coming back into the state for mass transit. And so there will be some people that will say, why would we do this or that? And I understand it doesn't raise any money. It's property tax. So I think it'll be on the radar too, but I'm not sure what the final result will be.
All right, thank you for those comments. And for each of these first four questions, we want to open it up to all the panelists to comment. So from a tax perspective, remainder of the panel, no need or requirement, but any additional comments you want to add?
I mean, look, I'll just bluntly, so I know last year's attempt to put I-Will into place feels like it was 2 years ago, but I think it was just last year that we had the big run at I-Will. I agree that if we're talking about taxes, it's going to be hard. You want to try to lower the corporate tax rate, abolish the income tax, and pass the sales tax increase at a time when prices are already high for consumers. I don't know how we're going to do all of that. So I look forward to seeing Senator Dawson's plan when it's released and taking a look at it. Senate Democrats did support one of the tax bills that moved through the Senate last year. Obviously, the final tax bill that passed this last session didn't bear a ton of resemblance to that first bill that we voted on, but we're certainly open to taking a look at the tax code, and our votes demonstrate that. And we certainly know that having the competitive corporate tax rate is an important part of our state's ability to attract workers and attract new investment. But I think the devil's always going to be in the details.
Thank you. Senator Zaun.
I as I mentioned, in regards to having a conversation about tax credits, this is something we've talked about for years. And I think it's something we should do on a regular basis, see how effective these are. I could tell you that we're not interested in raising taxes. Having the conversation about eliminating tax credits would mean potentially where we would not have to raise the sales tax to do a complete elimination of the income tax. In regards to I-Will, I know that it's been resisted in the past. I think the cards are on the table. It's an election year. I just don't see an appetite to raise the sales tax in the state of Iowa this coming session.
Surely there's a way to, the question has a lot of options in it, a lot of priorities in it. Surely there's a way to address taxes without only raising them on people who pay sales tax, right? So we have to find a way to make sure that any proposal we have doesn't just affect those who are less affluent in its implementation. So I hope that what we're looking at is addressing middle-class taxes and finding a way for workers to actually get the benefits of these tax cuts for a change. And I think it's pretty important to realize that when you're talking about cutting a lot of taxes and then raising a sales tax, the impact of that is disproportionately on the working poor. And I think that's not acceptable.
All right, thank you. All right, Senator Zaun, you're the lead for the next question. Back to the Des Moines Airport Terminal project, which again, we would say, the partnership would say is critical, not just for Des Moines, but for the region. If anybody's been on one of those late flights where you're flying in about 10 or 11 o'clock and you're talking to somebody next to you who's hopping in their car and driving to Clear Lake, it's really an Iowa issue. So from a Senate perspective, what do you think the options are in terms of finding funding for the terminal project?
Well, this is something that I have been very involved in the last several years. Full disclosure, most of my customers are outside the state of Iowa, so I'm in that airport about every other week. I've taken a tour of the underbelly of the Des Moines Airport with Kevin Foley, who's the director there, and it's like going back in time. There's no doubt that this is an incredible airport. There's no doubt that we need more terminals. If you come in late at night, which I do many times, every gate is full. I know that there's a lot of airlines that Kevin has went after to bring down the prices here. We have one of the most affordable airports in the Midwest. I can tell you that my daughter and her husband come down from Minneapolis sometimes and fly out of Des Moines Airport because it's less expensive to do that. We've got a crown jewel here. I do know this is in the past, I have put forward a legislation in regards to getting money, several $1 million. What my latest bill was before COVID was $10 million a year. Obviously COVID hit and that destroyed that opportunity. But I do know this, that there is very strong conversations with the governor right now in regards to some of this drawdown money that's coming out of DC that needs to be put into our Des Moines airport. So I really feel very optimistic. I love the plan that they came up with where they're, moving the terminal to where the air service is to the right as you go into the, well, now the entrance has changed, but as you go into.
Yeah, which I feel like they did that overnight. I don't know how they did that.
But anyway, I can tell you that it is a priority of the governor's. I've been speaking to the governor, and I think it is her priority, and she's going to make this announcement when she does her condition of the speech, is that she's got to put money into the Des Moines airport, and that's going to be a win-win for all of us, not only as passengers, but from an economic development standpoint.
Absolutely. Senator Wahls.
I have to confess, being over in Eastern Iowa, I don't fly out of the Des Moines airport very often, but I know that obviously it's an important part of our state's ability to bring people into the state and for folks who travel leaving out of Des Moines. I know that the funds that are coming out of Washington, D.C., the bipartisan infrastructure deal, are obviously going to be huge for the state of Iowa, not just our airports, but also our roads and bridges. I'm just really grateful that Cindy Axne voted for it.
Now, Representative Siegrist, I know you fly to Iowa's other airport on the west side of the state in Carter Lake, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to claim it.
As the person in this room that lives in the biggest metropolitan area in the state of Iowa, which would be Council Bluffs. Well, no, it is. I mean, Omaha Council Bluffs is 1 million people. And so I can tell you, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, having an affordable, robust airport is huge for economic development. That's what Eppley Airfield is in Omaha. Wonderful place to fly out of. I've flown out of Des Moines several times. Great place. So I think what Senator Zaun said, and both Senator Zaun Wahls and Senator Wahls have said about the federal money coming in is going to be helpful. I think the state should be a partner in that. And I would encourage you to really emphasize what was just said, when you got to jump in your car and drive to Esterville or something like that afterwards. Because I don't know if you know this, there's a little bias against Des Moines and Polk County. It may be news to some of you, but in the capital, there really is. And it's not that they don't like it. They just don't like it. So you do have to really emphasize that. I think this is Iowa's airport. And so I think the more you do, and I know you'll do that, the more you do that, it's easier. I think most people at the Capitol understand airport and air transportation is very vital for economic development. Des Moines needs to be better. And I think the state should be part of that partnership. And I think it would have a pretty good hearing moving forward.
Can confirm the Polk County bias. Feel it a lot. I think the way you describe it as Iowa's airport is important. I think that those numbers about out of state or outstate, out of Des Moines, people using the airport is critically important. And I think it's the idea of a front door is one that I've heard many of you say, and I think it's a good visual for people. It is the first impression a lot of folks have, especially let's not forget people who are interviewing for jobs when they come in. That's the first thing they see is the airport. And so again, workforce, it helps people see that what we have to offer right away. It's a really important first thing. And I would echo Leader Wahls' thanks to Representative Axne and to President Biden for the infrastructure money that's coming this way.
Senator Grassley also.
Yes, sure. Glad. Senator Ernst or the other folks of the delegation? No. Oh, sorry.
So finally, we're getting a little spice this morning. All right, let's.
Well, I mean,
let's
gonna do it.
All right. I had a monster before I came on. I didn't coffee. All right. Well, that's perfect timing because we're going to move on to another question.
Okay.
Senator Wahls, you're first up on this one. Again, I cannot emphasize enough all the times you talk to folks, and workforce is the hurdle. And I'm thinking a story I tell, and I apologize. I need to reach out to him and give him credit. It's a trucking company out of Packwood who said a third of his trucks sit idle, even though I think after you're there 6 to 9 months, you're making over $100,000. He just can't find people. And look, I grew up in Henry County. I don't know what the cost of living is in Packwood, but I think $120,000 is a really attractive salary. So Senator Wahls, in terms of untapping or tapping some of these sources of talent, whether it's making it easier for folks in Iowa, making it easier for folks to move here, making Iowa a welcoming place. So what do you think from your caucus perspective are things we can do to promote and grow from a workforce perspective?
Well, we're doing a lot of pre-session interviews right now, and I just did one with the Business Record here in Des Moines. And when we were having the conversation, I pointed out that before the pandemic, my local chambers of commerce were telling me that they had 3 issues: workforce, workforce, and workforce. And since the pandemic, they've added two more issues, workforce and workforce. And so that's where we're at as a state right now. And there should be no doubt that we're at a crisis level when it comes to the ability for businesses to hire new workers. As a state, I think that the focus has to be on making sure that we're attracting more Iowans, younger Iowans, and I think we're all working on better paid Iowans. That was something that Governor Vilsack focused on when he was here. Is that a little bit better? All right. And that's something that I think that our legislature needs to be focused on. As all that being said, that makes it really frustrating that we've seen a lot of Iowa being in the news for some of these divisive socio-cultural issues. I know Senator Zaun and I have some pretty strong disagreements about this, but saying that we're going to, go after teachers and librarians is not going to make Iowa's public education stronger. Trying to privatize Iowa's public schools is not going to make Iowa a more attractive place to live. And I think that if we want to talk about why people move to Iowa, it tends to be because they have good economic opportunities. We've got great public schools, and we've got a lower cost of living than some other places. We don't have mountains here. We don't have some of the other cultural amenities that some states have. So we got to figure out how we can be competitive. So when we have conversations about looking at tax policy, that's one way to do it. We talk about our great public education system. That's one way to do it. But I don't think that this emphasis on some of these social and cultural issues that we've seen from the majority over the last 2 years is a way that's going to make Iowa more competitive. One thing that I know is also really important is immigration. And I've been really, really proud to work in a bipartisan way with Senator Tim Kreinbrink, who's the chair of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate, to increase funding for English as a learning language courses in our community colleges. We know that that's a critically important skill for folks who are new Iowans. We used to have new Iowan centers in Iowa. I would love to see us go in that direction again, so that folks who are moving to Iowa, whether they're Afghanistan refugees coming here, whether they're immigrants from other countries, we're able to help those folks adapt and become productive and long-term members of Iowa. So a couple of things that I think should be on the focus. But again, I just want to go back to the point. As a caucus, we're going to be really laser focused on workforce and trying to solve this workforce crisis that we have here in our state. Right.
Well, I appreciate, since you brought that up. First of all, here's what I know, just from a common sense perspective, as someone that's been in business pretty much my whole life. Give them good pay, create a great tax environment, and people will come. Give them a great job, give them the amenities, the young people, the amenities that we have in downtown Des Moines that so many people in this room have worked many, many years ago for, including myself and the old mayors back then. What's happened in downtown Des Moines and the amenities is because of the hard work and the discipline of those great leaders we had, such as Preston Daniels back in the days. In regards to teachers, there's so much misinformation out there. It was brought to my attention by several parents, some of the garbage that is being taught to our kids. It is not appropriate. And I ask everyone in this room to go to the iowastandard.com and look and see what they are teaching our kids. They are teaching our kids. There's situations in several books that they have out there that it is appropriate for adults to have a sexual relationship with a child. I don't know if there's anybody in here that thinks that's healthy for our children. There are situations where cousins are together, 4th grade, doing things that I can't tell you. I would love, and I'm getting attacked right now, to email people. But the truth of the matter is if I tell people the actual illustrations that are being taught in these books, and I send that to someone that's under 18 years of age, I'm distributing child pornography. All I want our schools to do is teach our kids to be successful once they get out of school. Give them the tools that they need. And I think we need to put a stop to that garbage. And I encourage every one of you, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Even the Des Moines Register editorial person, Rock Hu, even said that it makes a lot of people uncomfortable to even look at this stuff. And this is the point I'm trying to make. So I'm not trying to get rid of teachers. We have the best teachers in America here in the state of Iowa. And but I just think they need to focus on making sure our kids are successful and productive once they get out in the workforce.
Representative Konfrst. Comments on workforce. Appreciate the comments from both Senator Wahls and Senator Zaun.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Senator Wahls was talking about with regard to making Iowa a welcoming place. And I think it's critically important that I teach communication, I teach branding, and Iowa's brand gets damaged when stories are out there about things that fringe elements in the state are doing or proposing. So it's critically important that we make sure that our brand continues to be strong. And so that's really what I'm advocating for. In addition to that, places, Senator Zaun mentioned downtown amenities, things like that. So important for people to come here. We just had a candidate come for a job at Drake, and we drive her around town and show her the things that we have to offer here. And she's always surprised. And I think that's amazing that it was blown away by the things that we have to offer. I wish, and I know the partnership tries very hard to amplify this all the time, but I wish people weren't surprised. My mom was active in the Des Moines Partnership, the women's chamber in the 70s, and had a button that said, "Let's keep Des Moines a private joke." That's an old Des Moines Partnership thing. I don't think you have that anymore. But it is always reassuring to see that the amenities we have, the culture we have, the opportunities we have here in Iowa are something that are interesting to people who come here and are considering a job. Let's make sure that we pass that threshold of not having them not even apply and interview here because of what they think we are. Let's make sure that they know who we are and what we have to offer when they're considering applying, so that we don't have to surprise them when they come to interview here. So I think our brand is really important.
Several things, obviously, we go into workforce development, has been stated. One of them, obviously, is preparing, having a couple of things. I think we've made some pretty good progress the last couple of years in addressing some of these things. Future Ready Iowa. Future Ready Iowa is something that has been, I think, a strong statement, and we need to continue to invest in that, particularly the last dollar scholarships, for example, for the community colleges, where you're bringing people into the workforce and getting them out of technical skills and getting them out into the workforce is extremely important. We need to continue to invest in that. And we have to, when we invest, we have to recognize that when we're bringing them into community colleges, a lot of those programs are 2-year programs. So we can't just fund 1 year, we have to fund 2 years. When I got elected, the biggest downside to being elected, besides being elected, was well, I had a lapse of sanity at some point, was I had to resign as president of the Iowa Western Board of Trustees. Iowa Western and our community college system are clearly jewels in our educational system here in Iowa. And the community colleges are ramping up in terms of their career and technical capabilities, as they always have. And last year, the legislature gave them a significant increase in terms of more than they actually asked for. So community college, workforce development, those things are very critical. Going along with that, obviously, is housing, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, and then childcare. And we did some good things in childcare last year, and we need to do some good things there. And I'm not telling too many people in this room anything that if you have childcare facilities at your business, that's the biggest benefit you can offer your workers. Those are the things we need to do to entice people to come here to Iowa. And lastly, even though we may not do Iowa this year, I'm a big proponent of our park system. And so I actually have a bill that's out there called Restore the Outdoor 2.0, where we need to take, and I believe we will this year, we take a couple million right now into deferred maintenance for our park system. I think we need to up that to $5 to $10 million a year for 5 years, using our gambling money, using our RIF money. Some of that money has been freed up because Vision Iowa money has fallen off. And I think the pandemic showed us one thing, as all three have said, amenities are important in this state. Well, part of that is our park system. We have a fabulous park system. We need to invest more money there. If we don't get IWIL done this year, we need to use some of that RIF money specifically for deferred maintenance at our parks, because that is a key to getting people to come to our state.
All right, thank you. We're going to go ahead and skip the amenities question because I think we're all in agreement on that. Let's move to the round robin questions on childcare, housing, and broadband. Senator Zaun, if it's all right, we'll start with you from a childcare perspective. Again, thank you for all the work that's already been done. What additional steps do you think are viable for 22?
Well, the big thing is this step. I can tell you that we've had people at work that we want to give a pay raise to, and unfortunately they couldn't take it because of the cliff effect on childcare. That is something that we started down the in regards to trying to solve that problem. We need to do more, to be honest with you. We need to put, obviously, there's a lot of new childcare centers that are opening up. And to get people in the workforce, they've got to be able to take their children somewhere. Obviously, during the COVID, it really opened up a lot of eyes because there was a lot of parents who were trying to work from home. And then because of the online learning that was there and at that time, childcare really became a big problem for a lot of people. And so obviously it's going to come down to funding and making sure that there's the appropriate funding to expand childcare, but most importantly, to make sure that there isn't roadblocks in place for these new development centers to open up.
Thank you.
I know that earlier this year, Governor Reynolds created a new child care task force. We didn't need another task force. We got to fix the child care system. That's it. There have been folks out here who've been talking to us in the legislature about how to fix child care for a long time. We didn't need to study the issue more. We needed action. Senate Democrats have a priority bill to make sure that we're increasing eligibility for the child care assistance, which is one of the most important tools we have to help middle-class families afford child care. I hear from folks in my community, and I'm sure it's true in Des Moines, people who are paying more for child care than they are for their mortgage or for student loan debt payments. I mean, we are at I know we've used the crisis word a couple of times this morning, but that's exactly where we are. And so I'm really grateful that we're going to have some of this additional federal money that will help us get some more dollars out the door. But by the way, when we talk about trying to have appropriate funding for child care assistance, increasing eligibility from 145% of the federal poverty line up to 200% of the federal poverty line, which is where Senate Democrats and I believe House Democrats are as well. That takes money, that takes revenue from the state. And so if we want to talk about trying to, eliminate 40 to 45% of the state budget by eliminating the income tax, that's going to require us to make really difficult choices about where we're spending our dollars. And if we want to talk about investing new dollars into the childcare system so that we can actually fix that problem, it's going to be really hard to do that if at the same time we're cutting off a huge chunk of our state revenue. So all of these issues that we're talking about for the partnership this morning that require investment, I know that we do have new federal dollars in the system right now, but those are one-time dollars. They're not going to last forever. And so we got to have some really tough conversations at the legislature about how we want to use these dollars and how we want to get at targeted investment for middle-class families that's going to attract people to the state of Iowa and help us solve this issue, because Iowa is relatively unique. We're one of the states that has the highest, if you look at all 50 states, in terms of the households that have all parents who work outside of the home, Iowa's at the top of that list. So childcare is a unique need in our state relative to a lot of other states, and we do have to make those investments, and they're not going to happen for free.
No, and we started to make those investments last year. As you know, we got rid of the child care cliff effect. We raised the tax credit and so on. And so one thing I've learned in my time in the legislature is, yeah, we all know the answers and we all know the problems, but sometimes you do need a task force to focus in on it. And that's what's happened with the governor's task force. There's a specific set of recommendations that are out there now, which we can build off of. Yes, we knew what those issues were before, but in politics, sometimes you really have to focus in on it. Now that the governor has done that with the task force, which was a broad spectrum of people, I think that it does add some impetus to the legislative process next year to do some of those things. So we do need to look at eligibility requirements. Another thing we need to look at that the House passed last year, but I don't believe came to fruition is look into businesses and looking for tax credits for businesses that establish child care centers on their campuses, because that again is clearly one of the biggest benefits you can ask. There's another one that would have added not historic preservation, but if you're in a rehab an old building into a child care center, you got some additional help for that. So the state has put money into it. And like most things in the legislative process, it's never enough. But I do think it will be a key issue coming up this upcoming session. I suspect the governor will use federal money, good, and additional state money. It is a significant problem along with broadband. I won't get off into that, but when you talk about child care and broadband in rural Iowa, we have to correct both of those in order to make the state grow.
I agree with Representative Siegrist. Oh, Look at that. I agree with Representative Siegrist with regard to childcare deserts and rural areas in the state that need access to childcare. We need access and affordability. It's not just about making sure there's a center in your town, but it's making sure people can afford it. I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Iowans have an extra $300 per child in their bank accounts, thanks to the federal government and the child tax credit and President Biden. I would tell you that that has been an important Band-Aid for folks as they look to pay for childcare. But we have proposed a lot of options with regard to working with small businesses and communities to get them to incentivize them to have childcare. We've worked on issues with regard to workforce in the childcare sector. We know right now that it's very hard to find people who will work in childcare because the pay isn't great. We all pay a lot for childcare, but the pay isn't great, and people can go work at large warehouse stores and warehouses to get much better pay there. Our priorities aren't where they need to be. We need to pay for childcare. We need to make sure that the people caring for our children are paid adequately. So we think wages are a really important element there as well.
Representative Konfrst, we'll stay with you for the housing question. We all agree it's an issue. There's no magic bullet solution, but from your perspective, what could the legislature identify in terms of progress to make from a housing perspective in 22?
I worked in affordable housing for a while early in my career and saw the need for affordable housing units across the state and across many states in the Midwest, and it hasn't gotten that much better. In fact, in some ways, it's gotten worse. We need to make sure that we're looking at what's a truly worthwhile environment for people to live in, where we can find affordable housing options for people, and how we can continue to incentivize organizations, companies to build affordable housing units and communities to support them. It's critically important that we address affordable housing in addition to housing. I was just speaking with someone yesterday who said that in one of the communities across the state, there were, that was yesterday at our thing, there were 500 units short of places to live in a small town to keep the workers employed. This is an immediate problem. We have to start building. We have to get shovels in the ground. We need to get going. And that means incentivizing affordable housing across the state. Affordable housing doesn't always mean a low-income housing unit. It means housing that people can afford in communities. So I think that we need to expand our definition of affordable housing and remember what affordability really means too.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to comment if you don't want.
No. I just, no. Okay, yeah, great. Okay, I passed. No, just one quick thing is that the housing tax development credits that we have been passing last year, I believe we did $40 million worth, and those are extremely important for that affordable housing. And so we need to continue to look at that and how we can ramp that up and make it a little more robust. So.
I'll take a moment here to highlight the work of my friend and colleague, Republican Senator Mark Lofgren from Muscatine. I had the pleasure of sitting next to Mark for 2 years in the Senate before I was elected leader, and they moved me up to the back bench. But Mark's been a fantastic senator working on these issues around housing. He's been a champion of the homes program. I worked with Senator Lofgren on trying to raise the cap on the real estate transfer tax dollars that get used to fund our housing trust funds across the state. I know the Polk County Housing Trust Fund is one of the best in the state. We've got a great one over in Johnson County. So I would like to make sure that we're continuing to look at potentially removing the cap of RTT funds that get used for funding our housing trust funds. And I know that we've got a lot of, again, more dollars coming down from the federal government. I would love to see the governor invest those funds directly into our housing trust funds, because those are folks who are on the ground in their communities, and they know the best way to spend those dollars on projects that are really going to move the needle. And I would just simply say, I would echo Representative Konfrst and Siegrist. Another word for affordable housing is workforce housing. When we talk about workforce housing, the workforce crisis, making sure that we're able to have these units is critically important to making sure that we're able to attract workforce to Iowa that can afford these homes and start to build up equity. The last thing that I want to mention, I know that we've had a lot of conversations about racial equity in this state over the last several years. One of the areas where Iowa has a lot of work to do is closing Iowa's home ownership gap between Black and white homeowners. Iowa has the 6th largest gap between Black and white Iowans when it comes to home ownership in the United States of America. And so when we want to talk about racial equity, this is an issue where I would love to see the legislature focus on trying to make sure that we're doing our part to close that gap so that Iowans of every race and ethnicity have an equal opportunity for the American dream.
I would just add that I believe in the market. I believe in our economy and the market correcting itself. And I see Rick Tollefson over there. I think things are going pretty well for Hubble. I see a lot of housing going up there. There comes a point where we got to prioritize things. We've thrown out a whole load of stuff out here today. I mentioned mental health. So housing, mental health, I'd rather put money into mental health. I am a believer that the people that are in the industry and in the metropolitan area is the area that that's where I live, it's getting done. And I believe that the market needs to decide that.
Thank you for the comments. All right, one last mandatory discussion point before we let the crowd throw things at you.
Mandatory.
Or questions at you.
Mandate's a careful word.
Yeah, bad word.
And we don't necessarily need to go on a snake draft on this, but broadband, we've talked a lot about broadband and certainly, again, tremendous amounts of money and investment. So I'll just open it up to the four of you for whatever comments you would want to make about what additional improvements we can make from a broadband perspective.
Just briefly, obviously, we took big steps last year. The state put $100 million into broadband expansion across the state. It is absolutely critical, particularly as we learned during the pandemic, for rural Iowa to be able to have some economic growth. After that, and I give credit to the money that's come to the federal government. I think the governor has put another $200 million of that federal money in. That's been very helpful. The original estimate was probably take $500 million, $500 million, get everybody connected. The legislation we passed last year was a big step forward with the federal money coming in. That's helpful. There's more federal money coming in on the infrastructure bill. So hopefully we'll be able to get that situation taken care of a couple of years. The only two caveats is this. One, we have to spend it smartly and efficiently. You just can't throw $300 million out there and think you're going to get it done properly. So we're going through that process. So we won't get it done probably as quickly as we'd like to, even though the money is available. But it is absolutely critical. And I think we're leading a lot of states in trying to be far ahead. And then the very quick story, my daughter graduated from Loras in April, and she wants to join the Peace Corps. I don't know who her parents are.
Nice.
Yeah, I know. But there's a backup because of COVID. So anyway, she just took a job at Zaun National Park yesterday. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But she had a job in April, and she's living in Dubuque where she went to school, and it was all online. She was doing marketing for a company out of Mexico City, and it was all online. But she had that ability because there was good internet in Dubuque. That can happen anywhere in Iowa, but we have to get this connecting done, and we are going to get it done. It's going to be a big accomplishment for everybody involved.
No, you good.
So I think we all agree that broadband connectivity is critically important for jobs, for quality of life, for rural communities, small towns, but also in some of our larger cities. There are plenty of areas that have inadequate broadband speeds. And so that it's definitely an urban Iowa issue and a rural Iowa issue and everything in between. Senate Democrats offered an amendment on the bill last year that would have created I think many of you are probably familiar with the Transportation Commission that helps guide the investment of the state's infrastructure dollars. We wanted to see something similar because we agree with Representative Siegrist's point. You got to be really intentional when you're talking about 9-figure, 10-figure investments. You want to be really smart about that. That amendment was not adopted, but I think, better late than never. I'd be happy to see that move forward sometime this next session. I think another critically important thing, and this is going to be a very in the weeds topic, but if anybody in this room has ever interacted with the Office of the Chief Information Officer in the state of Iowa, you know that the way we fund that office is very, very out of date. And so that office, unfortunately, is always being asked to do more than it has resources to do with. And so I would love to see, I don't think this is a partisan issue. I think Democrats and Republicans can agree that we can change the way that we fund that office so that they can actually meet the needs of not just state government, but help make sure that we're guiding those investments that are going to benefit all Iowans, both in the public and private sector.
I would add that affordability is also an issue when it comes to broadband. There's a lot of talk about pocketbook issues, a lot of talk about how much things cost at the store, and not a lot of talk about how much our bills are increasing and how we can make those things more affordable. Again, we're looking at affordable broadband, not just for the most poverty stricken in our state. They need affordable broadband too, but so does our middle class. We have a lot of bills that we're paying, and our middle class families are trying to balance all of this, and paying for affordable broadband is no longer an option, or paying for broadband is no longer an option. You can't, it's not something you can choose not to have if you want to have your kids go to school, have your daughter stay in Iowa and work, all of which I would love it. My kid would do that. She's not gonna, but I think that all of that is really important. And so we need to look at affordability too. And that means working with our partners in the private sector to make sure that they understand the impact of what we're doing and the opportunities that we're providing by helping them expand broadband in the state, and working with them on making sure that they're providing affordable care or affordable service to people too.
Senator Zaun, would you like to comment? All righty, Q&A time for the folks in the room. Sorry, folks on the phone. And I don't know if we have anybody with a microphone hanging out. There we go. All right, thank you. All right, not everybody at once. All right.
Well, she's walking there. Fun fact, the world's largest Google server farm is in Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Thank you for that.
Just saying.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Terry with Des Moines Waterworks, and thank you for being here this morning. Safe, clean drinking water is pretty much the foundational element for all of the things that we've been talking about this morning. So if you could talk a bit about what plans you might have to strengthen the state's focus on safe, clean drinking water across the state. Thank you.
Go ahead.
No, you're good.
Well, number one, and that kind of goes into the I will question, because obviously some of that money was there. And so that's one of the reasons I think it does have some support. The only thing I could say, I'm not particularly well versed on that. Remember, I'm a rookie. I've only been in 1 year. And in some ways that's true, because some of the things that have been done the last couple of years, I'm not as aware of. But I think it's been estimated $110 million is coming in from the federal infrastructure bill, which I think is great. And so I think that's going to be an issue that I can't specifically talk to, but clearly there's going to be some money that's going to be put into that. And I think we need to use that in the best way possible to continue to ensure, if it's Des Moines Waterworks, Council Bluffs Waterworks, that we're getting the best service we can with that money.
The House will just take this one. I think that the other thing we need to remember is that we've been talking about clean water for a long time. We've been talking about the need for clean water for a long time, and we keep kicking the can down the road, and the water keeps getting less clean or more expensive to clean. We're aware of that, and I think it's time that we actually take action, and I will as part of that conversation. Oh, you couldn't leave well enough alone.
Iowa was the first thing I ever voted for. 2010. I'm not going to tell you, I was 18. I flipped the ballot over, filled in the bubble for Iowa, flipped it back over, and then voted, I think, probably for Dave Loebsack. And now 11 years later, coming up on 12 years later, the fact that we still are not able to make the necessary investments to clean up our water, clean up our lakes, our rivers, our streams. I was a Boy Scout. I remember when I was a kid visiting lakes and not being able to go swimming because the bacteria count was too high. And even in Lake McBride, one of our most pristine bodies of water over in eastern Iowa, I was doing some swimming over the summer because wanted to get outdoors. And again, E. coli levels were too high. We've got a real problem. And the first step in solving any problem is admitting that there's a problem. And unfortunately, the legislature, and I know that there was Senate File 527 back in 2018, but that clearly hasn't gotten the job done. And so I think Iowa's obviously an important part of the equation. And I just think that it's a shame that now, however many years later, we still haven't gotten that done. So thank you for what you're doing. I was really excited to read about some of the new partnerships that Des Moines Waterworks has launched in the region. I'm excited to see if those are going to maybe be a middle path that can attract bipartisan political support. But I think our perspective on this is really clear. It's a problem. We've got to fix it.
Well, I'm very supportive of the nutrient reduction strategy that the governor of Brent put out several years ago. It comes down to money. We've talked a lot about resources, and obviously you all at the Des Moines Waterworks, I want to thank you for the conversations that are going on in regards to coming up with a metropolitan waterworks. And I think that's really important. It's something that I did get involved in as the mayor of Urbandale. But it's just going to come down to that. I mean, there's a lot of things that our people in agriculture are doing to try to fix this problem with cover crops and berms, and obviously that takes money. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. What is not helpful is when the Des Moines Waterworks sues all the counties up in Northwest Iowa. And it goes back to something that Jennifer talked about, this rift between Polk County versus the world. And it wasn't helpful. And I know that we've moved on from that. So I would just try not to do that again, because it was a lot of wounds that needed to be healed.
Next question.
Wasn't my idea.
Rick, we didn't say you could ask a question.
Matt, I know you didn't. So I thought I'd just continue on with it. Everyone would expect me to bring up ICON, Central Iowa Water Trails, part of that. So for us, for a lot of the business community, we looked at ICON as a means to attract people, workforce to the state of Iowa and to retain that workforce. A lot of times that gets lost. Brent kind of talked about it a little bit. Of course, his daughter went and decided to work in Utah instead of Iowa. But, you know, we can do this. I mean, we've raised nearly $30 million of private money, okay, to fund the ICON project, which is like 100 different projects throughout our metro area. This is the kind of project that's going to bring kids to Des Moines, Iowa, and keep them here. Okay, it's the kind of things we have to do. You know, yeah, I'd love to say, you know, if we can get our taxes down to zero, that'd be great. I guess we can compete straight on with South Dakota, but we're better than that. You know, focus on the amenities that are going to bring the people here and keep them here. That's why my kids are here. So hopefully I can keep my grandkids here. So ICON to me is very important. It's a statewide initiative. It's not just Central Iowa. It involves everything. Other parts of the state, Charles City, Manchester, Alcater have done a great job. They've led the way in water trails. We're going to be able to do it here in ICON, but we're going to need help from the states to make it happen.
Yeah, we know that House File 812 passed out of economic growth and is currently in Ways and Means in the House. And so I feel like that's a good, it's still alive, right? We're still working on looking at how this can work. And the water trails across the state are critically important, and collaboration and partnership on those water trails will be really important too. This is the kind of thing that definitely would keep kids here. I work with college seniors every day, and this generation, as you all know, those of you who are employing Gen Z, they want to do things outside of work, and they want a great place to do those things. And if we can enhance Iowa's waterways and our access to them and their recreational capacity, I think it's really important to do. Once again, almost everything we talked about today is workforce. Workforce isn't a single issue problem. It's something we need to address on all levels, and I think ICON's a good way to do that.
Any other questions from the audience?
Good morning. Ray Warner with Arion. As a company, it's owned by the majority of the independent telephone companies in the great state of Iowa. Just wanted to go on record of thanking all of you for your bipartisan effort in addressing the broadband issues that we've got across the state. The funding is very much appreciated, and the independent telephone company community is aggressively moving forward and putting in future-proof fiber optic solutions throughout the state and many communities. So again, thank you for that. From a question perspective, I was just curious when it comes to cyber security, what your thoughts are. I mean, obviously that's something that's of a huge concern, and just wanted to get your thoughts. I know there's some funding earmarked within the infrastructure bill. Just maybe thoughts on how that might be implemented. Thank you.
I really appreciate the question. I mentioned thinking how we fund the OCIO, the Office of the Chief Information Officer. I think that's the first step, because OCIO is a part of our front line of defense from the state of Iowa, being able to give support and training to county government, to city government that can't afford those services themselves. But they can't do that if their funding mechanism is tied to a fee-for-service model within state government. And so we need a complete overhaul in how we think about OCIO and the role that it plays in helping lead and prepare our state when it comes to cybersecurity. We know that these threats are only going to continue to grow over time. And so I would love to have more ideas from industry about ways that we can be supportive and helpful in cybersecurity. I'll tell you, it is not easy, even within the state legislature, convincing our colleagues that they need two-factor authorization, that they need to use a password manager, some of these basic things. There are, those of us who work in businesses where we have strong cybersecurity departments. I know that You probably, some of you have had to deal with folks in your IT department who are telling you, hey, your password needs to be longer, it needs to be changed every quarter. If you're anything like me, you get really annoyed about that. But that's a part of the world that we're living in now. And so we need to make sure that we have state government that's going to be responsive and well-versed in these issues and support municipal and county governments, school boards, and providing whatever support industry needs to make that a reality, because we know that we are at the beginning of these threats, not anywhere near the end.
And what I would add is, as Judiciary Chairman, this is something that I have a very high interest in. I know that we have Shazam here today, worked on some legislation for a local provider here in Des Moines and some of the despicable things that are going on with our ATM cards. I'm open-minded. Obviously, this is really an international tone is what it is. But we're limited in Iowa what we can, but anything we can do in Iowa to put these people behind bars is really what we need to do. Enhance the penalties like what we did with the people that were setting up all these skimming machines in our fuel pumps and our ATM machines and the different retailers that are out there. So interested in this issue, and it is huge.
Maybe just one quick thing I would add to that. I do regret to inform the people in this room that you are going to have to all learn more about Bitcoin and crypto technology. I know.
What about Dogecoin?
It's not something that is kind of easy to wrap our minds around. And there's like a whole lot of conversation around the speculative nature of some of these things. And I'm not here to tell you that you should invest in any of this stuff, but as an underlying technology, it's going to be a part of some of the solutions that we have for securing our digital world. And so it's just not something that is probably going to be affecting all of you now in the next year, next 5 years, but down the line, this is going to be something that we're all, for better and for worse, going to be learning more about.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Matthew McIver with Iowa Stage Theater Company. I'm also on the board of the Iowa Cultural Coalition. And as we talk about those 5 priorities that you mentioned, Senator Wahls, in terms of workforce, et cetera, wanted to get your thoughts on the role that arts and culture play in building placemaking across the state. I know community placemaking is one of the priorities for the partnership this year. The DCA is having their gala this Friday, which I highly encourage everyone to attend because they do great work across the state. Iowa Cultural Coalition is releasing a report this month that shows the funding that came through the DCA this year. It was a absolutely vital funds that saved arts and culture organizations across Iowa. 75% of that money came from the federal government and passed through the DCA. So as we look to the future and we're looking to attract workforce, which we know arts and culture investment does, as we're looking to build strong communities, as we're looking to invest in economic development, and we know there's a lot of research on the returns that arts and culture dollars give in terms of economic drivers in a community. What are your thoughts on support for the DCA and how we might grow those dollars to make this a more attractive place across the state for all organizations?
We talk a lot about Iowa being a great place to live, work, and play. 2 of those 3 involve arts and culture and making this community and placemaking a place where we all want to live and play outside of work. So it's really important that we do invest in culture and arts. I'm thrilled to hear that those funds did help with this. As someone who used to work for an organization that put arts and culture out in the community and across the state and made it accessible to others, I know exactly how important that information is and how those resources are. We are, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Cutting off our nose to save our face, whatever the phrase is, but we're short-sighted if we don't consider arts and culture funding as part of what we're doing and making sure that those things exist. We don't notice the impact of arts and culture offerings being gone until they're gone. And then it's too expensive to try to bring them back. We have to continue to serve and make sure that those options are available. Public-private partnerships are really important in that. Our business community needs to understand, and you do understand the importance of culture and arts in our communities. Continuing to do that in a public-private way is really important.
I assume you're talking about Iowa PBS.
I am.
Yeah, right. Jennifer and I go way back when she worked at Iowa PBS. I spent 12 years on the board and got to know her well. She's wonderful.
Oh,
despite some of her policy positions, she's
wrong a lot.
Yeah. Jennifer and I agree 80% of the time. The other 20% she's wrong. But no, and obviously the nice thing in Iowa, and not specifically to your question, is Iowa PBS has bipartisan support. That's not true in a lot of states. Iowa PBS has done just a wonderful job here in Iowa, and it's something I'm very supportive of. Arts and culture is extremely important. As a parent of a son who's living in LA, waiting on tables now, trying to be an actor, it's pretty close to home for me. But here in Council Bluffs, for example, we're fortunate, just as you are here, to have the Iowa West Foundation, which has set up PACE, the Potawatomi Arts and Cultural Entertainment Association. And so we stole the Nebraska Ballet to Council Bluffs. Great, love it, which is now called Midwest Ballet. And our community theaters, we have sculptures in Council Bluffs too. We screwed it up in Council Bluffs. We have them all over town. What Des Moines has done, Papa John's Sculpture Park, which is just outstanding, and it is an amenity. So arts and culture across state, be it Symphony in Ottumwa or Sioux City or whatever, extremely important. And I think we do forget about it sometimes, and we need to be reminded of the importance of it and be able to look at what we can do to enhance that across the state.
All right, time for one final question.
I'm Pat Petty, and I'm with a local office technology company out in Urbandale. And my question relates to this whole workforce issue that we're talking about. And it really confuses me. And I know prior to COVID, we had a somewhat of a tight labor force. However, post-COVID, it seems like we've hit this issue. You know, it's been terrible. You know, you go into a restaurant and there aren't sections open and so forth. And I'm just curious on what has caused, you know, such a issue with the employment post-COVID. I mean, why have people not gone back to work? Why have people that worked in restaurants not gone back to restaurants and worked? So I'm just kind of, did these people leave the state? What are they not going back to work? I'm just wondering if you have thoughts on where all these workers went, you know, now that we're in post-COVID.
You know, the statistic, I mean, when I said that it was issues 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I was not kidding. We have fewer Iowans working today than we had a decade ago. That's a huge problem. And so I think if you want to try and answer where exactly did people go and why are things so bad, I think it's a multifaceted answer. There isn't a single piece that has caused all of this. I think that you've seen, first of all, folks retire a little bit earlier than they might have otherwise. I think that we've seen folks switch careers. And so they switched out of maybe working in food service and they've moved into maybe a white collar job where there be different work conditions. I think that you are seeing some folks leave the state. I think you're also seeing a lot of folks stay home to take care of kids because they don't feel like their kids are going to be either safe in school or they don't have an opportunity in it because we talked about childcare a bunch this morning. And so you've seen folks leave the workforce, or because childcare is so expensive, it actually makes more sense to stay home with the kids rather than stay in the workforce. And so I think it's a multifaceted problem, and that's why it requires a multifaceted solution. I think the idea that we're just going to be able to solve this with only one policy position, is unfortunate. I mean, it would be great if that was the case. I don't think that's the case. It is a workforce crisis. There's no doubt about it. We talked about, I think, a lot of the areas where we'd be able to make investments to start moving the ball in the right direction. We'll see how many of those get done in the legislative session this year.
This is a nice way to end it. I agree with everything you said.
No, we're stopping right now.
It is.
Cut his mic.
I would just add this, that my wife, 11 years ago, after a career in business, went back to school and became a nurse. And so this is just one specific area. Every day she gets a call for come in and incentive pay, double time. I mean, the workforce shortage there and truck driving, even in community colleges. I was talking to my president yesterday, and we're losing staff, administrative type staff that can work from home now. And so, and why would they go into work? Now, that's not specifically, losing people to workforce, but every business, every industry you're in, they just can't find the people for a variety of reasons that were already stated. So the partnerships priorities here address some of those, and hopefully we'll be able to make a little bit of a dent in that this year.
All right. With that, I'd like a huge round of applause for our panelists. Thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it very much. And Ryan will come up to dismiss us from Mass.
Thank you. Go ahead. Yes. No, thank you guys. Matt has to stay. Matt's the only one that has to stay up here. Well, the reason why Matt has to stay up here is he talked about his Christmas list today, and I have a present for him. So I think I looked in the future, but you can open up here, or we can open up later. But so the reason we're giving him a gift, I'll just tell you what it is. It's our 2021 Michael Sadler Public Policy Award. So we just want to thank Matt again. I know Jay, Andrew, and myself could not have been as successful in 2021 without this man right here. So I just want to give him a round of applause for that. Thank you, Matt. And, it is a good opportunity to introduce our upcoming leadership, and they're here today. So finally, Kelly, if you want to take a stand and wave, and we have Bob House here as well. So these two individuals will be leading us into another successful 2022. So we thank you for your leadership, and we're looking forward to continue working together next year. Just a few policy events I do want to cover before we let everyone go. We are having our last public policy issue forum next Tuesday, December 14th. That will be all virtual. It will cover inclusive economic development, obviously a big topic. So we encourage you to attend that. And we encourage all the legislators here today and all the people here today to attend our opening night legislative reception on January 10th from 5 to 7 at the Des Moines Heritage Center. So we are back in 2022 in person. I'm super excited to announce that. And then lastly, save the date for DMDC 2022. It's going to happen this year. Okay. It's going to happen. We're doing a lot of planning right now. Registration is not open yet. It will open in February of 2022, but we encourage to put it on your calendars now because it's going to be an incredible event. With that, there's other ways to stay engaged with our public policy team by subscribing to our podcast, our e-newsletter. And if you want to participate when we develop our state policy agenda and federal policy agenda, join our Government Policy Council. With that, again, I want to thank our panelists and for everyone for joining us online and in person. Everyone have a great day.